How hard did you push it till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is Big C in Ashton. We are talking Stone Creek today. Very, very excited. Peter Jacobsen track, gonna be a good one. Ashton, how you been, sir?
Well, it's not 90 plus degrees in my apartment anymore. It's actually kind of cooled down in San Francisco, so that's a pro. I will be very blunt and say that I'm coming off of 2 days of quote unquote team building activities, which, to be clear, I'm not drive-by shooting my employer. I appreciate the in-person component, but it's interesting. I'm extroverted. I talk for a living. I do a podcast, but man, just being around people and making small talk. I think we had 53 of the 70 members of our team in San Francisco. And obviously we've talked about this before. I hire recruiters. So I've hired pretty much all of those people, and most of them have hired during COVID and have not met. So being like, again, I'm not like making fun of it, but just like having the small talk of like 53 people and those activities and that stuff. I'm running on fumes a little bit here, but we're not talking about recruiting processes, learning and development, insert tech buzzwords here. We're talking Stone Creek, which I know it's done by your boy. And to be clear, we're not going to go back-to-back podcasts where Chris just destroys Peter Jacobsen. There is one example. He'll talk about his least favorite hole where he can have his soapbox. But man, I'm excited because I don't know what I expected. But I guess for a kid from Atlanta who lives in Northern California, Stone Creek felt sort of like a Golden Tee course to me, but I mean that as a compliment. It really sort of captivated my imagination, especially the back nine. But
I think it was the one course that I undersold, and you felt like you made money on that stock purchase, because I think I have a little bit of jadedness towards courses that are built by Peter. Anybody that listens to this pod knows I'm very jaded when it comes to Peter Jacobsen courses. And again, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to go nuts. I'll stand on my soapbox on my least favorite hole of the course, but it's just I like Stone Creek for one reason, that it drains really well in rain. And we actually had to play in rain while we were out there. And the course did not soften up. We weren't getting plug balls. The greens were rolling just as fast prior to the rain as it was after we got dumped on in the middle of the rain or in the middle of the round. And so that's the one thing I really do enjoy about Stone Creek. It's a very dry course and a very wet climate. So it's well designed in that aspect. And I will say, out of Peter Jacobsen courses, I do like about 75% of this course. So, I'm not going to rag on this. This is probably one of the better Peter Jacobsen designs that I've played. There are, of course, the Peter Jacobsen, insert template holes that you see at every course that he ever designs. That makes me absolutely hate some holes, but I do think that it is a really great public track for a very, very reasonable rate.
Yeah, and again, I think and even though you're from the Pacific Northwest, I think the thing that it does, again, at least for me, but I'm sure even for you still, is there just something about the place, again, especially the back nine, that I think really sort of captivates your imagination. Like there's a lot of natural features, a lot of very kind of grand trees, I'm guessing, there's a lot of very dramatic land movement that actually feels quite natural. And so I think that checks off a lot of really interesting things. And I think we talked about last time we're at Chehalem, there's actually quite a few bad holes out there. There's really not at Stone Creek. There's a couple holes that, I mean, my least favorite hole that we'll talk about, I disliked it because I had the wrong thing off the tee. Shout out to you, Zach, for not telling me what to hit in our match. Thank you for that. And the hole that you're going to talk about, Chris, like, yeah, for sure. It's the Peter Jacobsen template hole. It's not great. It's really hard. But if you really go out there and say, hey, there's one bad hole, it's kind of a great captivating course that drains well, and it's like very affordable, especially at twilight. Sign me the fuck up for that, right? Like, I think honestly, looking back, I mean, we're going to remove Waverly for a second. Stone Creek is my favorite course that I played there. We're talking about Trysting Tree next week. Really liked the playability components of Trysting Tree, but I think like from a golf course perspective, give me Stone Creek. It really kind of checked off all the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it gives you challenges at all different levels and all different distances. I think that's one great thing. And there are holes out there that are wide open and allows you to kind of hit it all over the place. Large ballpark situation with very large fences that allows you to kind of keep the ball in play. And then there's going to be a lot of claustrophobic holes where you're going to step up to it and you're like, oh, I have to put a pin through a very tiny hole. I'm crocheting through this hole, and it's, it could be a scarf, or I could end up making a monstrosity. And so it's one of those things. I think it creates challenges, because if you know how to play it, what shots you're supposed to be hitting, it's a hole. There's holes out there that are very gettable, very scoreable. But then there's going to be holes that are just going to eat your fucking lunch, and they're extraordinarily hard, or, maybe not designed properly to be able to allow proper scoring. But I do think all in all, Stone Creek is probably one of the better representations of Pacific Northwest golf in the greater Portland area. One thing about Stone Creek, it is a little bit off the beaten path if you are staying in Portland, as me and Ashton ran into when I was like, oh yeah, it takes 25 minutes to get to the golf course.
This was the worst. Like, I love you, but this was the worst.
Yeah, it was. So usually it takes... We should
tell the story.
So yeah. Usually it takes me... I planned out 25 minutes to get to the golf course, meaning we had a tee time for 4:45. We leave at my shop at 4 o'clock. We're going to get there at 4:30 at the latest, 15, 20 minutes to kind of get our bags, check in, get out to the first tee. Plenty time. So, Ashton brought his new clubs that I built for him. We were getting them all dialed in, getting lies and lofts checked and corrected and dialed in for him. And so 4 o'clock rolled around. I was like, I should probably Google how long it's going to take us to get there. At this point, I probably should have done that at 3:30, because we would have bounced out earlier than that if we knew there was going to be this substantial traffic that there was. My dumbass.
And Chris, the other thing too that's important is, like, when I got there on Friday morning, you had like literally nothing on your calendar.
Yeah,
like, there was no fittings or anything.
Nothing.
Sure enough, like, I mean, I think starting at about 11 o'clock, like, you guys were people coming in doing everything from like, hey, could you fix this club, to like someone who like booked a random fitting. Like, I know that you had to kind of leave my session to go build the driver for a guy. So The other component too is we were just picturing like, there's not going to be a soul in there. We're going to jam through this, because we weren't being idiots. Like, I'm not like,
I planned it out really well.
It's like, I'm not like, let me hit 55 irons to prove the point. We were jamming, but like, it just turned out we're like, ironically, of course, we get to the really important scoring stuff. My wedges, you're trying to get it dialed in. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, if we leave like right now, we're actually going to like miss our tee time.
Yeah. And that was probably the hardest situation, was just like, I had to step away a few times. We were just getting down to the last few clubs. I had to, I Googled it. It said 48 minutes, and this was at 4 o'clock. So we're already going to be 2 or 3 minutes late. And we still had 3 clubs. So we spent 10 minutes jamming through your last 3 clubs, which in turn...
I still don't even know if they're right.
They're close enough. We know the distances at least, but I don't think they're exactly where I
might
want
have to
them to
hit
be.
up your boy in San Carlos.
Yeah, I
and
might
be
have to send
"Hey,
you to
dog."
Vic and have you go see my guy. But it was... So we scrambled to get those dialed in as best as we possibly could. Got in the car about 4:10. We were going to show up just at 5 o'clock. Our boy Zach from Northwest Golf Guys was coming out to play with us, and our buddy Bradley. So on the way there, I'm driving like a madman. I mean, the one thing I would say one of my largest flaws, personality-wise, is I don't like to be late, and I don't like traffic. So when you combine the two, I become a very big dickhead. And it shows while I'm driving because I'm just like screaming at every person in front of us that they're driving slow or,
you just have a comment about everything. And the funny thing to me is like, I love you so much. And I said this to you, but like for someone who doesn't like to be late, we're always cutting it like a little too close. Like for someone who dislikes being late, you need to make it a mantra. Like start actually arriving 10 minutes early. Because like we almost missed my flight last June.
No.
Because we're like dicking around eating
only
fucking
when I'm with
soup.
you am I late. Anytime.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
What a privilege. How exciting it is that.
Hey, I can't count how many times in the Bay Area I was there, rain session, putting, and Ashton was running to the tee box from his car.
Well, in fairness, if my employer listens to this, I guess we'll have a separate discussion. But Chris would book a little he'd get us like a 2:10 tee time on a Thursday, and that doctor block in the afternoon is got to make it to that doctor's appointment. So yeah, dog, yeah, for sure, like definitely running to the tee. But the thing with what Chris does is he's like, okay, there's this intersection where there's like always traffic, and I'm really hoping there's not going to be a fucking course there's going to be. Get up there, there's like 6 cars, and all of a sudden Chris is just like, you got to go, dog, you got to go, you got to be aggressive. I'm like, Chris, like literally, man, we're like 8 cars back, like they can't hear you. Nobody can hear you but me. You're stressing me out. And the other thing we haven't even mentioned is I was playing on my Northwest/NorCal Golf Guys match against plus 1.6 Zach. So, like, not exactly feeling super dialed. It's like, how far do the wedges go? Unsure. Late to the tee time by 15 minutes, being a total chode and showing up late. So, yeah, the heart rate was going like 140 BPM. And we got there late, in fact. And yeah, but Chris with the little peanut gallery of like, you got to be assertive. And then sure enough, we get to the stop sign. There's a car coming pretty fast. Chris's new Passat, the wheels kind of like spin a little bit. And I'm like, oh, good. Like my butthole was like pretty tight.
I was working the turbo hard.
You were. Yeah, but man, yeah. Definitely the heart rate was going as we were getting onto the tee at I almost said Wolf Creek, at Stone Creek. Man, yeah, you are a piece of work in the car.
Only when I'm stressed and running late and there's traffic. That's the only time that I'm that way. But if anybody knows me, I am a very even keel about most situations. I'm not a heavily aggressive person. I'm an opinionated person, but I'm not a heavily aggressive person. And when certain situations come up, Big Bear, Big C comes out, and I just start roaring at people. And yeah, so that we got there. Zach got our tee time pushed back a bit for us. Bradley was super chill. He was just hitting some balls and putting around, and met up with Zach, and they were both sitting on the tee box when we got there. And only tough scene really was, we were playing 4 rounds in 4 days. So, we were going to take it easy, and we were going to ride in a cart. First thing is I get a cart for us. While I'm walking away, already paid for the cart. The general manager of Stone Creek then goes, "Oh, just so you know, 1, it's cart path only. 2, the cart has to be in by 8:45. 2 things that would have been super cool to give that info to somebody before they dropped cart money on a cart. Because as you guys know, I'm not much of a walker. But if I'm going to basically have to, which as we'll tell you guys, on the 15th hole, I had to literally jam out because it was like 8:44, bring the cart back to the cart barn, take my bag off of it, meet them, basically skip a hole, and then meet them on 17 to be able to like walk the last 2 holes with them. What we probably should have done is we should have just returned the cart after 9 and then just walked the back 9. But I didn't think.
But if y'all are curious at home, 1, I did in fact see Chris with a golf bag on his shoulder, which is new to me. And also, if you're curious, no, the secondary strap was not fully attached. So as he's walking, he's like attaching the strap on. No, okay, the strap on the bag. Attaching the strap on out of context sounds inappropriate. Attaching the strap onto his bag. So, yes, Chris does carry his golf bag, but it was not super dialed and prepared for him to be walking.
No, it was
that's for
a
damn sure.
fresh bag. Shout out to Jones for hooking your boy up at Club Champion with a new freshie.
That's quite literally a free ad right here.
Yeah,
free ad.
Free ad. Gave me a nice little.
To be clear, for Chris, I did not get a Jones bag, so. Not shout
Ashton
out to Jones
did not.
as far as
It's
me.
shout out to the club fitter that works 2 blocks from the Jones factory. So we got a little hookup for being in the neighborhood. But
scummy.
I do a lot of free repair work for these guys and really hook them up. So it's an even trade.
Okay, then let's get into Stone Creek. Then no more free ads. Chris, you said we're doing our usual format or our new format.
New format.
We're doing 3 favorite holes as well as our least favorite hole. You kick us off and tell us about number 6.
So, number 6, really, really fun hole. It's par 3 from the tips. It's 180 yards from where I play. It's about 165. Really enjoyable par 3. There's a lot of mind fuckery on this hole. You've got bunkers short left of this hole. Basically the green runs kind of at a semi L shape to the left, more of a kidney bean that kind of rounds front to back. There is a lake on the left hand side, trees on the right hand side, not a lot of place to bail out. You can hit it long left. That's probably the main area that you can bail out, but it's just a very challenging par 3 that I think gives you beautiful Pacific Northwest views with large trees, water, bunker, kind of the whole 9 yards of what conduces a Pacific Northwest golf course. And the tee box is framed by these beautifully tall evergreen trees. It's just a kind of a picturesque hole. And I don't think that the green is a very challenging green. This one's more of an aesthetically pleasing hole than it is a extremely well-designed hole, in my opinion. It's just every time I step up to this hole, I feel at ease. It's not long, but it's not short. It gives you a bit of challenge with distance. It really makes you hit a golf shot out there, because if you don't, you're going to hit it short into the bunker or into the water, or you're going to blast it right into the trees and then have kind of like a punchy wedge to kind of roll it up onto the green. And it's just a really fun hole. And that's the easiest way for me to describe it. It's fun. It's very pretty, picturesque, good hole.
And we'll give a shout out to Stone Creek on their website. They have actually just descriptions written by Peter Jacobsen, and I thought it's worth noting that he says that, quote, "In my opinion, this is Stone Creek's most beautiful par 3." So what I'm hearing is that Chris and Peter are very much on the same page here.
Occasionally
it's
it'll
very
happen.
beautiful. And I'll say it so you don't have to be scummy. Chris literally almost made a hole-in-one here. Legitimately almost made a hole-in-one here. So it was we always kind of say, like, how do you kind of break up, your how you played versus a course. But I totally agree. It's a great hole, but he also almost dunked it. So it was a good all the way around. And it was really raining at that point in the round. So, like, it was an impressive shot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it landed. My ball mark was about 3 inches from the hole, and then my ball ended up about 6 inches from the hole. So
yeah,
what wasn't bad. It was just a nice little tap in for bird, and walking on to the next hole. It's again, every time I step onto that hole, I think I probably play it under par more than I play it at par, which is pretty freaking nuts to say about a par 3, but there's something about this par 3 every time I go out and play it. I play it well, and I mean, I could look at my scores, but I'll bet you I'm averaging like two and a half strokes on average.
I'd like
on
you to
that
look
hole.
at your scores. I'd like that to be
I will.
audited.
I'll do all the math for you, and I'll revert back next time we talk.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
The auditor over here. I will talk about my one of my first hole. It's actually the hole before that, number 5. I guess also it might be helpful. We can kind of read these descriptions. So hole number 5, Peter says, "This is the toughest hole in the course," which I will say is very ironic because it's the 10 handicap hole. So I guess Peter and the USGA do not necessarily see eye to eye. This is the toughest hole in the course. The tee shot is framed on the left and right by Douglas firs. There's a slight dog leg to the right, which is longer than the yardage indicates, and the second shot is uphill and plays longer than you think. There are a couple of bunkers on the right side of the green that may not be in view. The green is flat, yet has a subtle putting surface. And I think that what I kind of liked about the architecture of this place in general is it's good architecture in the sense of there are obstacles, whether it's, in this case, a dog leg, that's kind of right where, from my tees, where I'd want to hit it. So, for example, I kind of hit a really solid drive, but a little bit of a shove for me as a lefty. And I was blocked out a little bit, still not a lot, but just a little bit by those trees. Again, right kind of in the landing area is this dog leg. And then as he said, I think he says it well, from where I was over on the left side, I didn't even see the right bunker, which I believe you hit it in, Chris, which again is good, kind of a hidden obstacle for me. And then again, he says it well. The green wasn't anything crazy, but I think that I had a pretty long putt and left myself like 5 or 6 feet just because I was like, I didn't quite see that break. So I think it's a really good hole because, early on, number 1 is a good hole, but kind of handshake. Number 2 is a bit of a challenging par 3, but again, it's all kind of in front of you. And then number 3, I think, is where the course really kind of picks up a little bit, where it's like, okay, wow, here's a dog leg and movement and hidden obstacles, which I think is kind of a big theme that we'll talk about.
Kind of the time that you enter into the trees when you get on the hole 3. So, on this course, 1 and 2 are very open. You don't see any trees on those 2 holes. You don't
even think about the trees.
No, it's wide open. It's kind of the same with 9 and 10 and 18. There's not a whole lot of trees on those courses or those holes. But one architectural design that I will give props to Peter for is a lot of his par 4s and par 5s that are on the, in the inside of the course, tree line. He designed them kind of to be like an hourglass shape. So you almost have this like wide opening from the tee box that kind of funnels down into a very narrow section with trees running along each side of it. And then once you get through that chute, it widens open again for you to hit an approach shot, which I think is kind of a cool design. I will give Peter credit on this as well. Well designed from multiple tee boxes. the challenge does not change from multiple tee boxes where, I did complain on the last episode that he designs a lot of courses where he doesn't really give a shit about anybody that doesn't play the back tees, where I think there was a lot of thought put into multiple tees on this course, and you create similar challenges from the different tees no matter where you're playing.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that when I think about this, I did not think about this till you said it, but a lot of this course is kind of going in and out of the trees, and this is kind of where you go into, like, 5 and 6 are both like heavily wooded, and then 7 you tee off, and you actually kind of tee off in the woods and kind of tee off into open space, and then 8 is open, and then 9 is open. So I think it was just something captivating for me, again, as someone who doesn't play a lot of Pacific Northwest golf. It's sort of like, oh, we're going into the trees. And again, a pretty hard hole where I think I hit a good driver, and then probably I think had a good 8-iron as well. So a couple kind of good shots early in the round. So very much like number 5. Chris, next on your list is number 9. Kind of a quirky hole. So tell me about number 9.
Yeah, number 9 is really fun. So what I love about number 9, it's designed to have 2 fairways. So you've got one that sits up on a ledge on the right-hand side. Separating the 2 fairways is a link of bunkers that kind of runs along a ridge that separates the 2 bunkers and has multiple the 2 fairways that separates the elevations of the fairway. And so kind of, you've got bunkers on the left-hand side that run along number 1 that kind of separate 1 and the first left-hand side fairway of this hole. And so, I mean, the play really here is to hit a really nice drive in between the 2 bunkers on the left fairway. And if you catch it correctly, it will catch a downhill slope. The hole plays at about 397. But if you can hit it about 250, 260 carry and catch that slope, it will run down to basically, add an extra 30, 40 yards onto your drive, which then leaves you with, just like a flip wedge into the green. If you take it on the right-hand side, you will have a bit better look at it and there's a lot more open space to miss. But the thing is, you're now elevated, you're hitting over these bunkers onto this green, and it creates a much longer shot. So taking the risk and going between the bunkers on the left-hand fairway is kind of the play there. But it's a very much a risk-reward hole because, as Ashton remembers, he hit it wide left on this hole, ended up basically almost on the tee box of number 1, and then got a very bad caddy call by our buddies that we were playing with, and they told him, oh yeah, from where you're at, it's 140 every time. 140 every time. So Ashton's like, all right, it's an 8-iron. Walks his ass over there, hits an 8-iron, Icaritos the motherfucker over the green. And then walks up and he goes, nope, you guys were wrong there. It definitely wasn't 140. I hit a 140 club, and that did not go 140. And, I mean, it was like 30 yards over the green. It wasn't even close. Where I think if he hit a pitching wedge, he probably would have been a little bit in better shape. But, he hit his 160 club that ended up going 20 yards over and caused some issues where I think I flip wedged on there from my drive and ended up birdieing that hole, ending that even par for the front 9.
Yeah, no, and again, I don't have like a ton of thoughts because I was essentially kind of largely out of the hole. But I mean, the one thing I will say is like, I got what I deserved. I mean, I hit because this is me making excuses, but I'm sort of going back and forth at the rain gloves, 2 rain gloves, 1 rain glove, and I just couldn't really get comfortable. And what I found out on 8 and 9 is I cannot close the club face with 2 gloves on. So basically, I left the club face wide open, hit like 100-yard slice. When you hit a 100-yard slice, you get what you deserve. But definitely a cool hole. I mean, the one thing I'll just say anecdotally is, you said then and you just said now that the fact that the 2 fairways looks cool, but the fact that the right fairway is like stupid and shouldn't be there, like I'd say is a ding on the architecture, but it does look cool. And I do like how it kind of goes down to like a little chute there. And the starter shack by 1 sort of feels almost like something you'd see like in Scotland or Ireland.
Yeah, it's
so
very
there's a lot of aesthetic.
Dunes-esque.
Yeah, so there's a lot of aesthetic appeal, but I feel obligated to say that the fact that there's a fairway that you shouldn't hit it in that's kind of stupid, that's the harder option to hit it on, is sort of like maybe a bit dumb. But when I asked you why he did it, you said he probably had the land, which is a very fair. Peter's got to cash those checks, man. He's got to build that bunker. And I can imagine too, if you had a bad shot into that bunker between fairways, you are boned.
Oh, you're in those bunkers. It makes it a bogey hole. Like, that's the thing, where if you don't hit a good drive on that hole, you end up in those bunkers, which still leave you about 100 yards out, depending on where you're at in them. I mean, if anybody's hit a 100-yard bunker shot on a slope to get onto a green, not an easy shot. I think only somebody like Matty Fitz could do that, but it's very, very difficult. So you have to hit a good drive there, which I think is cool, because I mean, you really could technically hit a hybrid or 3-wood, play it short of those bunkers, and be totally fine with 150 yards in. And that's just, it all depends on how you want to play it.
Yeah, a lot of options, which I think now that we're talking about this out loud, I mean, I think the thing about Stone Creek is it really places a premium on hitting good tee shots. Whatever you choose, just really kind of placing a premium on that.
Yep.
And that takes me to number 12. Number 12, the front 9 is good. I think the back 9 is a lot more kind of spectacular, kind of from a views and vista standpoint. That can also get us into some trouble, as we'll talk about in a little bit. But I really liked number 12, which to read it says, Peter says, this is a spectacular risk-reward hole. I love how he put that in quotations, if we didn't know what that is. With wetlands on the left side of the fairway. In the summer, hit a 3-wood or long iron. In the winter, go with driver. Stay to the right side to get the best approach shot. The green has a lot of movement with a bunker on the right side. So, again, going back to what we were just talking about placing a premium on your tee shot. If you go left, you're just screwed. You're into the wetlands. You're going to have to drop. So you're definitely encouraged to kind of cheat along the right side. However, if you hit it up into the woods, I would actually say it could even be worse than hitting it left, because if you hit it over on the left side, you can drop and at least have some sort of an angle, where if you hit it up in the trees, it's just not very good. So again, it really places a premium. I think I hit hybrid on this one. I kind of followed Zach's lead. But then the thing I got to give him credit on is, I know he says ideally you hit a 3-wood or a long iron in the summer, but it's just an uncomfortable tee shot. So I hit hybrid. I believe I hit kind of a sawed-off 5-iron in here, and I didn't even get it to the green. Got it up and down for par. But yeah, I mean, hybrid 5-iron is really hard. And, I think Zach might have hit iron. I mean, if we're talking about hitting 5-iron, 4-iron in, it's just a really hard hole. Because also too, up by the green, lots of undulation, bunkers over on the right side. And then Zach actually kind of yanked his off the hill, and he actually was on the hill even further right of the bunkers. So just a lot of places you can't hit it, which again, there are definitely some open areas at Stone Creek, but I think it's a pretty penal golf course if you're kind of spraying it all over the place. And number 12 is a good example of that.
Yeah, no, I think number 12 again is a very well designed hole, and exactly what you said. It's different depending on when you play it as well, and what season you're playing it at. It plays much longer in the winter, much shorter in the summer. So, you definitely change your approach to that hole dependent upon the time of the year, which I think is kind of a cool design and well thought out in that aspect.
Yeah, and also, again, similar idea of what we're talking about of kind of running off to a stretch of holes. 12 is kind of like 12, well, we'll have issues with this, but, 12, 13, 14, 15 is really kind of all in a similar vein, to kind of bury the lead. A couple of our least favorite holes are in the stretch too, but you can definitely kind of see 12, 13, 14, 15 being in the same kind of family of idea of a hole. And kind of 12 is, again, one that kind of kicks off that idea. But Chris, your kind of third and final hole you wanted to talk about is number 17, which, as Peter says on the write-up, is the toughest driving hole in the course. Don't know if you agree with that, but he said that it's the toughest driving hole in the course.
I don't disagree with it. Main thing for me is that you do need to put your ball in a proper position closer to the right-hand side of the hole, kind of running along the trees. That will then allow you to have more room on the left-hand side to be able to have a bit of a miss if you're approaching the green on your second shot, because you have a big lake on the right-hand side of this green. You don't really have any bunkers that are going to cause you any issues. There are actually 0 bunkers on this hole at all. It's one of the only holes out there that doesn't have a bunker. And if you hit it anywhere right on your second shot, you're in the lake. There is 0 room on the right-hand side, which you have a bit of a bailout on the left between the cart path and the green. But if you're far enough right and you play a fade like myself, you just aim for the left side of the green, fade it in, you're good to go. If you're a bit of a drawer of the ball, it's a little tough, because if you leave it out and your draw doesn't come to play, you're probably going to end up in the lake. So it all depends on how you play the shot, but I think it's a very risk reward second shot, which is kind of the reason why I like it. Everybody knows I like multiple options. I like, that bit of a risk reward, and it demands a very good tee shot off the tee. So I think with that, and then having that bit of risk reward on the end, it's just another good, well-designed hole.
Yeah, and the creek there makes it like it's really beautiful, and a big part of the approach shot.
Yep.
The only thing that's interesting, and maybe I just murdered my drive. I think I did hit a really good drive there, but it is sort of feels like winter with all the rain. It says here, or Peter says, that the reason why it's going to be so challenging is you're hitting a mid to long iron. I think I hit a gap wedge in here, so I didn't think it was a very hard hole because I hit driver gap wedge, and for me it works for my shot shape, but. If you're one of those people who's having like a 6 iron into that green, I think you're probably just going to bail way out to the left and hope to make par. So, but again, really I agree with you there. The final one for me is number 14. He says hole 14 is a beautiful short par 3 with a tiny postage stamp green. Play a short iron or wedge to the green, which is 15 to 18 yards deep. Their front left pin position is enough to scare even the best players. Really beautiful. I mean, again, there's a lot of like protected wetland, and you kind of actually walk through that on a bridge as you kind of go to the green. This is where I got to give a shout out to Zach, because I did not know this, but basically he said there's kind of a big mound, because it's a forced carry, but again, it's a very kind of short hole. But there's a mound kind of behind the green, and Zach actually, he went first, and he basically flew it up on the hill and kind of sucked it back. I did the same. So actually I had like a 3-footer, 4-footer for birdie. But it's a really cool hole. And, and also too, I sort of love when a hole, it's not, I like obviously to get rewarded for good execution, but there's something fun about like, how it's going to come off the hill, right? Like as we've kind of said a lot, watching the ball on the ground is quite fun. So I just really liked that hole. And I'd also just be curious, I've said this a bunch, but would love to kind of see that place, especially when it's a little crispy, because I'd be so curious, if you play it too far up the hill, I could see balls actually sucking all the way off the green, like going down that hill too fast, potentially going off the front. So just a really, really cool hole. And again, just like absolutely beautiful, because again, after the rain, the trees, it just felt, the way the light was kind of coming off the water and the trees. Just a really, really beautiful and captivating hole. But after 14, Chris, we get to your least favorite hole number 15. Why do you dislike this hole so much?
I dislike this hole because it's the fucking Peter Jacobsen template. It's the hole. Anytime we've ever talked about Peter Jacobsen courses, this is the hole I'm fucking talking about. Basically, off the tee, first you have a blind tee shot. You can't see any of the fairway of where you're going to land it. So for a newcomer like Ashton, and of course Zach being in a match isn't going to tell Ashton this because he knows how long Ashton hits it. If you hit it long left, you're done. Your ball is OB. It's going to be absolutely toast. If you hit it long, like straight down the middle or slightly on the right-hand side in the summer, that ball is going to jettison right down the hill, right into this little creek that runs along the front of the end of the fairway. You've got about up to 270 to kind of roll it down that hill and get in there. You're on mute, sir. You did me. You did what I did.
Oh, my bad. Aren't you describing number 13? Number 15 is one at the huge valley. I mean, that's totally fine. I can talk about number 15, but aren't you talking about number 13?
My apologies. They're both my least favorite holes. So, yeah, I'll talk about 13 then.
You talk about 13.
So, guys, my apologies. We pulled Poppy Hills here.
Oh, God. Which routing did you start on? The long one, the short one, the front one, the back one, the par 5, the one that's facing the orientation of the north or the south? So for context, Chris is talking about number 13. I'm
talking about 13. My apologies. 13 and 15 both have
You were doing
ravine.
an excellent job at talking about number 13. Yeah. I was just like, that's not the hole I remember.
I don't have it in front of me. My apologies, guys. But 13 is they're both similar holes, but 13 gives you that blind carry, and it does come down into a ravine. But the difference between 13 and 15, and Ashton will talk about it a little bit more. On 13, you've got this cart path that runs along the front. There's a little river or creek that runs before the cart path, and you're basically hitting your second shot uphill, very, very steep graded hill, to be able to carry about 30 feet, 40 feet, probably about 30 feet up this hill to an elevated green that slopes back to front. So it's just like, it's one of those second shots. If you get lucky enough to hit a good shot to be in the fairway, you're now hitting the ball down. You have a downward slope that you're hitting the ball off of, meaning that the ball, your feet your back foot is going to be higher than your front foot, which means that you've got to put it back in your stance, try to get some loft on the fucking club to be able to get it high enough to get up the ravine. It's just a very challenging shot. And for a golf course that's a publicly accessible golf course that 90% of people that play here are going to be probably over a 10 handicap, it's really, really horrible design and creates kind of a bottleneck when you play there on the weekend between that hole and between 13, 14, 15. It's kind of a shit show when you get to those because they're all very tight holes, very difficult, and they're just very poorly designed. It also looks like the land might have forced him to design these because there is no other land in this area for them to put any more holes. Like, they maximize the land opportunities that they had for this property. So those ravines were probably in existence and just fell into the template of Peter Jacobsen. But it's a fucking miserable hole. 13 is an absolutely miserable hole. You know, you have to hit that blind tee shot and then hit a downhill, lofted club to be able to run it up there. And usually the play is you club way up, you hit a hybrid or you hit a 4 or 5 iron, and you hit this like punchy runner that you just slam into the hill and hope it has enough speed on the ball for it slamming into the hill and just rolling up, which I think me, Brad, and Zach all kind of did that, hit the hill and kind of steamed it up there.
Yeah, I sort of barfed on myself, but I mean, Zach actually pointed out that there's a white stake, which actually is sort of telling you where to aim, but it's literally almost in the tree. So it's just like
it looks like you're hitting right into the trees. Yeah,
which for me, if I hit a pole, then you're actually into the tree. So as you said, it's just a really hard hole. My issue with the design of it is purely like I like options, and it's essentially I hit driver, and there was no reason. Shout out to Zach for not telling me the match play component. But I think the big thing is just like it's just you need to go like 230 and then 215, which is a little gimmicky and a little dumb, and certainly a hole that you're hoping to just get out of there with a par.
Especially
but
at
15,
a par
as Chris
4.
said.
Especially at a par 4.
Totally. And then as Chris said, 15, very similar idea. I think 15 is a fundamentally harder hole, mainly just because I hit kind of not a slice, but I hit kind of a cut kind of over on the left side of the fairway in play, and I was excited about that. But then the issue was from there is like the angle on the left side is absolutely screwed. So the big thing is if you have, and again, I want to give a kudos for if you hit a good tee shot, you should be rewarded for sure. But basically, if you're anywhere to the left side of the fairway, you almost have to lay up on a par 4, which is, pretty dumb, right? I think what they need to do probably is remove some of those trees over on the left side so it's a little bit more accessible. And then also just to rant for a second, also because of the cart path, for example, I went over there having no idea I was being blocked out, had a hybrid in my hand, and then I was like, well, let me just chip a hybrid over here to and then I hit it too far, hit it into the crap. A really good kind of interesting green, but yeah, I think really the only way to make that hole sort of good and fun and accessible is to sort of hammer a driver on the right side of the hole near the cart path, and then have probably still a 6 or 7 iron in. It's a really, 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 really hard hole. And again, to your point, 13 being hard and tricky, 14, as I said, 14 short and not that hard, but again, if you're a 12 handicap and you can't hit a 9 iron over the water, you're going to be sitting there all day. And then you get to 15, which is long, bad angle and bone zone. You're just talking about 3 holes that can just bring pace of play to a grinding halt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's kind of the play I don't particularly like. And the one thing with that hole with 15 is it's not a well designed hole. With that you basically have to, when players, locals are telling you that you have to hit into the trees towards the cart path and let it trickle off of the hill into the fairway, and that's how you play the hole, it's a fucking poor designed hole. You should never hit it basically trying to go OB to get it in play. That makes no fucking logical sense as a golfer. And you talk to any locals, they're like, yeah, and when it's dry out here, you hit it right into those trees and it'll roll right into the fairway. And it's like, what? That's ridiculous. That's crazy. But that's kind of how this hole has to be played, because even when you do hit a very well hit tee shot in the summertime, your ball could still get ejected straight into the shit on the left. So you almost have to play that slope on the right-hand side to kind of slow your ball down. So being a fader of the ball, it helps me on this hole because I'm basically fading it into the slope, which slows my ball down, and then it just trickles into the fairway. So if you are a fader of the ball or you hit it left to right, it's a decent play for you. But if you don't hit it left to right, it's a very, very difficult hole.
Yeah, but hey, look, I mean, like we said, for as affordable as it is, if you have one hole that's just a little bit hard, you try to make bogey and get out of there. Like overall, I think Stone Creek is a big gigantic thumbs up because our usual stuff, greens were good. Amenities were nothing to write home about, but are totally fine. I mean, again, we got there at like 5 o'clock, so we didn't see like the kitchen in full swing. They seemed to have like a nice bar and grill area, but again, nothing out of the ordinary. We had no pace of plays issues because we got there at 5 o'clock. The staff was not super friendly. Like, I mean, granted, we were the last people on the golf course, and I know we were late to our tee time, but like, they
There
clearly wanted to
also
like
was
lock up, and they were like waiting on
out
us.
there. Like we were one of two groups on the entire golf course. So one thing I will give them feedback about is like be friendly to a group of guys that just dropped $200 in the rain to come out and play. Just saying, instead of being grouchy,
or just close the course, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't want us out there, just don't.
And it was very obvious when we were walking off the course that the general manager
Didn't greet us.
he was very upset that we were still here. And it was if it was
and it was like 9:15, but like
I get it though, but like you run a golf course, you're a general manager of a golf course, like your hours are going to be long. You chose this career path, so it's just one of those things where it's like, I get it on both ends, but it's also just like be a little bit more friendly because and so
well, and it's the same vibe he gave you of like I think that as someone who's a little bit less grouchy and friendly, probably would have said, hey, just so you know, we have cart pass only today. Like the same idea. Like he was not there. Like he was not there to give you customer service.
No,
right.
And that's the thing. I walked in and I told him, hey, our buddy Zach said we were going to be late, and they're out there, and he goes, yep, they're already on the tee box. You guys need to pack up and go. Like, cool, I get it. I apologize. We're 15 minutes late. There's also no one out on the golf course, so we weren't tying anybody up. Like, zero
also, a side
people.
note, especially if you're a public course, do you need a gate? I hate to be that way. Like, do you need a gate? Like, if someone's gonna like run their car all over the golf course, they're probably gonna find a way around the gate. Like, I don't know. The whole idea of like they have to be there to lock up. It's like, just go home, man. Like we can see ourselves out, right?
I mean, there's plenty of courses in the Portland area, like Eastmoreland and Rose City, that don't have locks on their courses that don't have issues with that.
Yeah, but overall, I would say again, this is like I said, this was my favorite of the courses, and Chris, eventually one day when I come play, I'm excited to see. Allegedly, these places get crispy and no rain. I didn't say that, but Stone Creek really kind of, we're a week out, and I can definitely still see Stone Creek in my head. I really, really enjoyed it.
It's a fun course, and if anybody is in the Portland area, make the little extra drive to go out to Stone Creek. It's worth it if you're trying to find a course that's of that caliber under $75, because you can find courses that are a little bit better, like the Reserve and Pumpkin, things like that, Langdon Farms, that are going to be in that premium $100 range, $75 to $100 range. But for me and Ashton with a cart walked out of there for $95. And I feel like that was a really, really reasonable rate. Because, I mean, if you were walking, I think Brad and Zach paid like $38. $38 for 18, fantastic.
I very, very, very much regret writing, but again, like you live and you learn. I was just glad to play with us being late, but yeah, man, definitely excited to get out there. Again, you definitely have kind of a really great course there, and I can definitely see why that place gets a lot of love. And it's in Oregon City, is that right?
Yeah. So it's in Oregon City, which is just southeast of Portland, but this is even more like this is at like the bottom tip of Oregon City. So you're you're almost in what's called Estacada, and that's a little small town in Portland, and it's, I mean, in traffic, if you're in downtown Portland, it's about 50-minute drive if you're dealing with traffic. If there's no traffic and it's a clear day,
Hey,
35.
If you're at the club champion in Tiger with traffic, it's about 45 minutes.
That's
So
true.
everyone knows now.
No matter
so
where you're
be
coming
good.
from in traffic, it's going to take 45 minutes. Just because it's 2-lane roads once you get off the freeway there. And there's no way of getting around it because it's kind of tucked deep off of, the beaten path. So, but for the rate, again, it's a very small clubhouse, small amenities, small shop. I would definitely say be a little bit more welcoming to guys that are going to come out and play in the rain, that you probably had about 30% capacity of people playing on that golf course that day. So I would definitely say that, but that's my only hang up. And I've never had issues going out to Stone Creek with anybody kind of being grumpy or being a dick other than that time. And I guess it's a little warranted. We were late to our tee time and all that, but I don't know. I just think a little bit of friendliness and customer service goes a long way.
Yeah. Overall, great day. And this is all I'll say. I beat Zach 4-3. Moving on to the next round. So, Zach, really fun. I cannot believe I've never played golf with Zach, but to play Zach at what is considered to be a home course, walk out the W, feels pretty good. But yeah, Chris, excited next week to talk about not Tristan Tree, as I keep wanting to call it, Tristing Tree down in Corvallis, which is
AKA
again
the kissing tree.
Yeah. And no, there's an actual story there, but equally as good, just in a very different way. So I'm excited to talk to you about that next week, my man.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Take it easy,
peace.
bud.